If you want to be more effective in your work and in your life, and you'd like to have more confidence that you're meeting your intentions, this is where it begins. Welcome to Do Busy Right, helping you organize your information and manage your attention so that they work for you, not against you. We educate you and encourage you by discussing ways to be more effective, not more exhausted. Let's do busy right. This is one of my favorite kinds of episodes. Today I get to deal with a listener question. And the question I'm going to deal with today revolves around the notion of self-management and how we fall into areas where we need to begin to manage ourselves, areas where our bosses cannot or don't want to manage us as directly and as in detailed a fashion as we might expect them to. Our question today is from a new friend named Adrian, and she reached out to me after we had met at a networking event. What we'll talk about today, and I'll get into her question in more detail here in a little bit. The bottom line is that she's facing this situation in her own career growth where she's not getting the same amount of direct, detailed management that she once did. And now she's feeling that, and the symptoms of this are pretty readily explained, and I'll do that later in the episode. So I'm really looking forward to helping Adrian out, and you get to listen in as I directly coach Adrian. First, let me say I love it when listeners ask me questions. It's great feedback to help me redirect and retune what I'm saying in these podcasts. And I certainly don't believe that I can be completely coherent or completely answer the nuances of every question. So I love it when you all send me in questions and I can do an episode. If you'll send me a question and I'll try to deal with it on the podcast, I'll let you know when your episode is going to air, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. It's not hard to get a hold of me. You can reach me at larry@dobusyright.com. And I love this part of the community that we're building here. People that have questions are people that are looking into the situation and people that are self-identifying as wanting to get better. And that's my favorite part about all this, is helping people who have a desire to do something different, helping people who really want to become more than what they are now, and that have the, for lack of a better word, humility to raise their hand and go, hey, I don't really know much in this area. So reaching out to find somebody that they hope knows some more than they do. But I love being around people that are trying to grow their skills and trying to pursue growth in their career through any different avenue. I'll just say it again, love to get your questions. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find there, or you can hit me directly at larry@dobusyright.com. So we'll get back to Adrian's question. And I'll say, generally, if you're a growth-oriented individual, specifically in your career, but really in any area of your life, you're going to find that you bump into this problem at least at some point in your career, and probably at multiple points. Adrian's situation is one that many of us will face in our career. She got an exciting new job with a new company. And the reason it's exciting is because the company that she's now with is a somewhat smaller company, so there's more opportunity, kind of getting in on the ground floor. But also because she's going to have the freedom to exercise a broader skill set and to increase her value to the company. So she went from one job with one company to another job with another company, and it's a great gig. She senses a change in management, and there are certain symptoms associated with that. And so she reached out to me to say, okay, well, what's going on with my symptoms? So Adrian, thanks so much for your question. As we grow in our careers, assuming that we're moving from an employee role to an employee role, what we call a promotion, it's interesting to note that the skills that got you the promotion are probably not the full set of skills that you're going to need to be successful in the new position. There's a great book I read some years ago by Marshall Goldsmith, and the name of the book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And Marshall spends the entire length of this book, it's not a terribly long book, but it is a book, talking about the fact that different roles in the hierarchy of an organization require these different skill sets. In, say, an entry level role, it requires a certain set of skills. And then the next role up in the organization is going to require a different set of skills. So in the employee role, you really are not called on to exercise that next level set of skills. And so they don't show up very well to others in your organization. Most people promote on something called potential. And there's a big debate about that I may cover in another episode. But the point is, in many cases, people get promoted not because they've already demonstrated the needed skill set to any great degree, but because of their work in their current position, they're expected to be able to acquire those skills and exercise them very well. And Marshall Goldsmith deals with this in his book, so I highly recommend that. Again, the name of the book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So as an example, let's look at probably the first promotion that most people would receive in their careers. And that's the move from, I'll say, individual producer or entry-level employee up to, typically the move is to a position called team lead. As you become a team lead, you're going to need to express different skills and different abilities than what you did as a single contributor, as a solo contributor to the organization. And those things are the usual things: leadership, the ability to exert influence over other people and get them on board with a project, the ability to, some people will say you need the ability to motivate others. And so these are skills that there's simply no real place to exercise in that solo contributor role. But now you're out into this new role as team lead. Now there's an opportunity to begin to express these skills. In any promotion, that's going to be true. So this is a general problem for people that are growing in their careers. Promotion, promotion, promotion. And each one of those moves, and Marshall Goldsmith argues this, each one of those moves is probably going to require some additional skills. And that's great. That's what we call career growth. A lot of us, that's what satisfies us as we move through our careers, is we get to do new and different things. The ability to do these new and different things is a little more rare, and so provides a little more value to the organization. And we get to share in that value that we're providing to the organization through an increase in salary, participation in bonus pool, other perks that reward us as we move into these broader sets of positions. Now, I said it's kind of hard to do this, and I think Marshall Goldsmith would agree that it's hard to acquire those new skills, and it's hard on really two fronts. First is clearly identifying the new skills that you're going to need. You need to identify them pretty precisely, because otherwise you're just working on random new skills. Really becoming insightful about what skills does this new position require of me. And it may even be useful to interview other people who are being or have been successful in that role within the organization and say, okay, what did you learn as you took this promotion? What new things did you need to explore and add to your skill set as you moved from role A to role B in this organization? And that's really mentorship, and asking, what specifically helped you, in your view, be successful in this position. So the first reason it's hard is because understanding which skills you need to acquire and being precise about doing it. The second one is really, I think, more subtle, the second problem. The second problem is, where do you get training in those skills? So back to our example of a promotion to a team lead. You're actually moving into the management of other people. While this is a well-studied field in the literature, that knowledge from the literature is not heavily applied, I would say, in most organizations. Most managers learn management by replicating what their managers did for them in history. And so then management thinking becomes this passed down through the generations. That's fine for something that was right to begin with, but I'll argue in other places that the current state of management and organizations is not, let's say, as good as it could be. So that's the second problem is where do you get training on these new skills? Because as a solo contributor, you're probably exercising technical skills. In other words, you're able to produce because you're a good programmer or you're good at doing accounting work or whatever your role is, you're technically good at. And that technical knowledge and technical training is fairly easy to acquire as compared to this more, what would we say, generalized or more subtle training, specifically in the area of management. So it can be a little bit challenging on those two fronts, but that just means that what Marshall Goldsmith said is true. What got you here won't get you there. And you've got to do the work once you're in that position to continue to earn that position. And part of that is this increasing lack of specific direction about your role. And one of the things that you'll need to learn is how to build that in for yourself. So as you climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, you'll get less and less and less direct day-to-day management. And so learning how to build in some self-management. Adrian, you're facing this exact thing. You're more self-directed in the new role. And this is a set of skills that the old role didn't require of you. You had a boss who was fairly directive, presumably in proportion with your role in the organization. Now you're into a position where maybe that's less true. The symptoms that you talk about, and we'll go into detail on this in a little bit, really are those symptoms of, hey, I used to have this direct management, this detailed management, and now I feel like I have less of that. And that's fine. That's great. That means you're growing in your career and that the organization trusts you to be able to develop these skills. And these are skills that will stand you in good stead going forward in your career. One of the reasons why you have less direct management as you move up in the hierarchy is the organization expects you to recommend and execute your own projects. They're giving you an increasing amount of authority. And what that means in the organization is the ability to utilize the organization's resources, the ability to decide at some level and to some degree what the organization is going to engage in doing. As you recommend those projects, you're going to have to present a plan for those projects, and people are going to have less ability to meaningfully critique that plan because your expertise is increasing, and that's what they want from you. So this whole business of getting into a position where you recommend and execute your own projects is a big piece of what's going on. That's one of the reasons why this managerial, this direct, detailed management kind of drifts away from you. You'll also find out, if you haven't already, you'll need to, defend your recommendation. You'll need to demonstrate why you and your team are the right people to engage in this project. And what happens there is you really need to be able to give your organization ways to assess your progress. That really speaks to this whole notion of self-management. You've got to set up your own mileposts, so to speak, and give those to the organization so then the organization can see that you're on track. So all this is very exciting stuff, but just the nuts and bolts of how how to execute it well. And if you're creating your own mileposts, then that's the only thing the organization is going to be able to use to manage you. And this is what everybody wants. It's not a problem. But they're not going to be able to recommend to you mileposts. And if you say, well, measure me by mileposts, they are not going to know to come up and measure you on anything other than or less than that. You say, hey, here's the measurement points, and they go, okay, you're either going to hit those or you're not. And then in between, you're in this position where you're self-managing and you're developing management for the people that are on your team. They really begin to be unable to manage you to some greater or lesser degree. And this is just, again, I'll reiterate that this is a natural extension of career growth. There's nothing sinister going on here. Nobody's trying to be a bad person. Nobody's trying to put you in a position where you're going to do damage to yourself. It's just a natural evolution of your role in the organization. And for that reason, it really broadens out to lots of different situations that we face in our work life. Adrian, you're not the only person that faces this problem. You're one of few that has clearly identified it and asked about it. So applause for that. But you're not the only person to face this situation, this general situation. And it probably will not be the only time you face it in your career. So learning this self-management techniques is a very good career skill to have, because then as you move up in the organization, or as you move up generally in your career, you're going to have a foundation in that self-management. So again, congratulations on thinking through and doing this work. I say this is a general problem for working people, and I think that's true. So there are three things that are happening. One is promotions. We'll talk about that. We already have talked about that a good bit, but I'll just mention a little bit more how it fits into this framework. So there's promotions, there's the rise of knowledge work, and then there's the gig economy. Okay, so we'll talk about a little bit about all three of these things. We've already talked about the impact of promotion on self-management. So as you grow within an organization, or even grow across organizations, then we've talked about how that requires you to begin to develop and exercise self-management. Because, Adrian, what you're feeling here is a little bit of, I'll use the term vacuum, between where you were and the level of detail at which you were managed, now out into a less detailed management structure. And you're feeling that gap of, well, nobody's doing this function for me. And so learning how to do it for yourself is really where we're at. And I'll talk about the ins and outs and pros and cons of that at some point. Of the three forces, we've talked a good bit about promotions and how they put you into a self-management situation. Let's talk about knowledge work. So the growth of knowledge work, I've talked about this elsewhere. If we're knowledge workers, that means that we're at some level of expert in a technical field. What that means is that we have to define our own work to the degree that we become experts in our field. Technically, we define our own work. And I'll give an example to clarify this. When you go to the doctor, your doctor is an expert in a particular technical field. And you go there because the person is an expert in their field. It's actually pretty easy to, I'm going to use the phrase, make smart knowledge workers dumb. And here's how that might work. So you go in because you have some situation that you're unhappy about. And you go and you explain the situation to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, well, I guess I hypothesize that you have condition X based on your symptoms. And what I propose is that we perform this test. And once we do that, then we'll have some more evidence on this hypothesis. If our hypothesis is true, then we've got treatment regimens that we'll work through with you. all you have to do to make the doctor dumb is to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I looked up on WebMD and I think your diagnosis of me is incorrect. And I think I need this other test to find out this other situation. It's kind of an extreme example because I think most of us don't argue at this level with our doctor, but I don't know. But it's easier in other situations where the knowledge gap is not quite so clear to take a knowledge worker and by over managing them, interfere with their ability to be as good as they can be. And so that's what the medical doctor example is for. And it's actually pretty easy to fall into this trap because we're all curious about that knowledge set. And we go, why do you believe that? And oh, well, I believe, this and all these different kinds of ideas. And we have to be careful that we're not interfering with our knowledge workers' ability to exercise their own knowledge and judgment. And in organizations, it's real easy because most bosses think that they need to tell people what to do. And they bump into an expert in a field, and it's very difficult for bosses to release that initiative and to say, hey, well, you know better than I do, so you tell me what you're going to do and I'll help you get it done. It's very difficult for bosses to do that. So from that perspective, when we move to knowledge work as a part of the employment culture is really changing, or dare I say, challenging this notion of traditional management practice, where the boss knows more than whatever their direct report knows, unless the boss always tells the direct report what to do. And this is a holdover from factory days and Henry Ford and Frederick Taylor and these people who literally did know better. But now we're in a world where, if you hire somebody into your organization who's a CPA, then they know that better than you do. Therefore, it's really difficult for you to say, no, you don't need to be doing this bit of accounting over here. You need to be doing that bit of accounting over there. And the CPA is going, hey, I understand what I'm doing. Get out of the way and let me work, so to speak. So that's challenging this traditional management practice. And we saw the doctor exam. All you got to do is say, well, I'm not going to take test X, so we're not going to do that. I think I need test Y. And then the doctor who gave you their hypothesis, their educated guess at what's going on, is now not going to be able to confirm or deny that hypothesis because you're not doing what they asked you to do, right? And it's an easy situation to fall into. So we're out now, and many managers understand this situation around knowledge work. Enlightened, I'm using air quotes, enlightened managers then try to back away from that, direct, hey, no, you've got to do this thing right now kind of approach. But as I said before, that's a challenge for management thinking because in history, the boss was the one that knew what to do. And there's a great tendency to direct and to tell and to cover that knowledge. The bottom line is, as we engage in more and more knowledge work, there's this vacuum of management. And as we grow in our knowledge work skills, we're going to feel that vacuum more and more and more. And feeling that vacuum again is there are symptoms of feeling that vacuum. We'll talk specifically about what those are. So we talked about promotion and we talked about the growth of knowledge work. So now let's talk about the gig economy. So the gig economy, as you know, is a lot of people are, let's say, removing themselves from their company so that they can go practice their technical specialty on their own. And it's really interesting how one of the ways this is coming about, because formerly as a knowledge worker, you needed lots of expensive technology to support your knowledge work. Companies supplied that. That's one of the functions of large organizations, is to supply that technology and those support functions so that knowledge workers can focus on their knowledge work and be more valuable. You'd prefer not to have a scientist that you're paying an exorbitant amount of money to, you'd prefer not to have them performing their own cleanup. Chefs don't clean up behind themselves. They have people to do that when they're cooking because they need to be moving on to the next chef thing. But companies and teams and organizations often supply a lot of those support functions. And over time, those support functions have moved into our technology. One of the things that's led to is that it's easier to perform our support functions, and it's gotten cheaper to purchase that support. So an example, back in the day, if you were in marketing, you needed a color printer that would print pretty brochures, perhaps. But those things were very expensive. And so a company would have a marketing department with, say, 5, 6, 7 people who needed this printing function. And then they would be able to spread the cost of that expensive printer over several people and thus be able to support them. And now you can do all of these things in your home office. If you give me $3,000 and a spare bedroom, it's not hard to position you where you have all the technological support you need. Computers have gotten cheap. Applications are subscriptions rather than big expensive packages. Printers are pretty easy to come by. Much of the administrative tasks that we once did are now brought into the technology. For example, very few people now have somebody to answer their phone for them. Even at fairly high levels of organizations, you probably might not have a secretary. Whether that's good or bad is a debate for another day, but the notion of secretary, admin assistant, as it's become to be called, is, as far as I can tell, a fading notion as we outsource things that used to take a human to do. We outsource them now to technology. Voicemail is free with your phone account. You don't need to pay somebody $30,000 a year to take phone messages for you. Your phone will do that itself. And so technology has enabled the gig economy to a large degree. Now, when we get into the gig economy, what we find is that a business person needs to make trade-offs. So if you have more than one customer in your own business, then you're going to need to manage yourself, at least so far as, well, today's the day I need to work on company A. And yes, company B is important. And yes, they want their stuff as soon as they possibly can get it. And they may even call you and say, I need my stuff. But today's the day you're going to work on company A. And so making these trade-offs is a big part of self-management. Even if you're not out into the gig economy, you're beginning to have to make these trade-offs yourself. And this is a big part of what I refer to as self-management. So we've talked about 3 different, I'm going to say, forces that push us toward this self-management idea and away from just being able to sit at a desk and do what the boss tells you to do. When we look at this self-management thing, what we see is that being an employee involves something of a trade-off. Let's say you've got a certain level of technical skill and you're faced with the choice of taking a job with a company or opening your own firm. There's not one right answer for everybody. Some people become employees and other people become sole proprietors, if you will. Well, sole proprietors probably have a greater amount of revenue than employees do, because companies have to make money too. And so you become an employee, and the trade-off then is you don't feel like you need to manage yourself as much. That structure comes with that employee role. And it's the right thing for many, many people, and they're very happy doing it. On the other hand, if you go out on your own, then you're going to have to supply all these different functions, this self-management, along with other functions that a company has that employees simply don't have to worry about. One of the things, I know several physicians in my personal life, they're friends of mine, and different physicians make this trade-off in different ways. I would have thought that the goal of being a physician is to have a private practice. But I'm seeing some of my friends who have private practice move back into groups or move back into hospital doctoring, in part because the challenges of running a business along with being a doctor, they want to be a doctor. They don't want to be a business person. And so they're really in action making this trade-off. And that's very interesting because it highlights for us the kinds of things that you can expect from being an employee versus being in the gig economy. And I would argue that difference, a big part of that difference is this self-management. Again, these three forces are just pushing us off into this self-management kind of idea. Adrian, back to you. You're in a position now where you're feeling less of this direct management and becoming a self-manager to a greater degree. And as I alluded to earlier, the problem is that we're not really taught how to manage. You may have taken a management class in school, maybe not. We're not taught to manage generally. And I would say that we're really never taught how to manage ourselves. I've got every degree that the business school allows, right? Bachelor's, 2 master's degree, and Ph.D. And at no point did anybody ever say, hey, you know what? Here's how you manage your own day-to-day stuff. Hey, you're going to face a lot of information challenges. Here's how you deal with information. Hey, this communication thing, here's how you got to deal with the communication thing. So it's a little bit of a challenge because we're not taught to do that. And I'll read a quote, Adrian, I'll read a quote back to you, and we'll think about the symptoms that you're facing, and I'll map those to this question of the challenge of self-management. So here's Adrian's quote. With this new job, it's so fluid and things roll over so much, and so much is dependent upon other schedules and setting those meetings. I have got to find that balance of giving myself grace and feeling accomplished for the day. I am the definition of a perfectionist, in quotes. And there's still such a strong side of my personality and character that depends on the positive feedback or praise from superiors to meet my need of feeling secure in my job and that I am doing a good job. And that depends on hard deadline tasks and producing those in an A+ fashion on time. I'm realizing every day that this position I'm in now will likely never have those optics. So I'm struggling with how to retrain my brain and daily goals to find some new balance of healthy and productive work days without that big pat on the back and crossing off everything on my list. So much rolls over to the days following. So that's some symptoms that you may be experiencing that you're wondering, hey, why do I feel this way? Well, it's not because you're broken, and it's not because you're no good at your job. It's just because you're facing this gap. So, Adrian, I would suggest that you lean into and begin to learn this self-management. And one way to think about this is to look back at what bosses do for us as ways to figure out what we now need to be doing for ourselves, at least a little bit more. One of the things that bosses do to help employees in this whole discussion, right? It's like, what do you mean my boss helps me? My boss is the biggest pain in the butt that I have. They're not helping me. They're being mean to me, and et cetera. The level of people that are listening to this podcast really don't feel that way, but you kind of get it, right? My boss is helping me. What do you mean? But anyway, we'll define a couple of ways, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about. One, there's kind of three primary ways that I've identified that bosses help employees. And the first is task management. As an employee, you really don't have to decide a whole lot what your task list looks like. Your boss is well prepared to help you at a pretty detailed level of, first do this, then do that, here's the other thing, and all this stuff, right? Now, some bosses may do a great job of this, other bosses may do a poor job, but you see where we're at. So this task management piece, and don't forget the blah, and where's the thing I asked you to do? So this task management and task completion is something that really bosses tend to help employees at. So that's one of the things that when we talk about self-management, that's one of the things we're going to have to address and learn how to do for ourselves. The second way is bosses help us define what our role is. Bosses interpret the organization for us and they say, oh, hey, in this company, being a accountant junior level means this is your area of responsibilities. These are the skills you're going to need to exercise. Here's the things we expect of you. In many ways, they define our role for us. And that's great because in those situations, we fulfill the boss's expectation and then we go home happy and everything's okay, because we've done what the boss said and all that, that's what we need to do. And in some ways that makes our lives easier. And the third place that bosses really help is in career management. The at least tacit agreement with companies is, okay, here's the role, do this well, fulfill this role, and then over time, we'll have additional opportunities. We'll explore additional opportunities for you in terms of promotion, new roles with the company, growth with the company, these kinds of ideas. And many people had their entire career within one company. I say had because I think this is a fading tradition, maybe, or a fading role for companies. Companies are much less engaged in our overall career management than they once were. But bosses can really help you with that. Hey, once you've done this role well for a year or 18 months, then we, the company, as represented by me, the boss, will help you find this next role within our organization, and we'll be happy to put you in. So bosses help us with task management, with defining our roles, and with career management. Now, we've already talked about the ways that the three forces that I referred to earlier limit bosses' ability and to some degree desire to help employees do that. And so once again, these are areas, task management, defining your role, and career management, that self-management should consider those three areas. With that said, we look at self-management, and there are two general questions that we'll need to deal with in the self-management world. The first question is this abstract kind of mindset situation. What is a management mindset? And Adrian, you helped us understand a few of these ideas, and I'll just highlight them from the symptoms that you expressed in your note to me, in your question. Part of a management mindset is, how do you give feedback to people? How do you help them do the best possible job they can do? And this is a challenge in the management world. You can learn how to do it better and you can learn how to do it worse, but this whole notion of, hey, that was a really good job you did there. I appreciate that. Keep that up. Versus, hey, you did a really good job in some areas over here, but I'd like for you to learn more about this other area. And I think the next time you do this task that you'll find that you get a better result. The underlying problem here is that in the knowledge work world, given these three forces, it's increasingly challenging to deliver that praise. Hey, good job. And I'll give another example with a doctor, with a medical doctor. You go in and, same scenario, you've got this situation and you go see the doctor and the doctor says, well, I think it might be condition blah. Okay, and we're going to run this test to give us evidence of whether or not it actually is condition blah, and then we've got a treatment regimen for that. The doctor is, to some degree, your employee in this scenario. To some degree, you're paying the doctor and you're utilizing the results of their work. So to some degree, you're the boss / customer here. If you were to praise the doctor for being a good doctor, what are you going to say? Right? Just imagine that you're going to say, oh, doc, look, you did a really great job. A lot of doctors in this area would have said, oh, you have condition A and we're going to test it this way. But you identified that I had condition B, and that really is a great exercise of your medical skill, because I've seen this other, right? I mean, how do you effectively praise somebody whose knowledge set is far beyond your own in their technical specialty? So as part of the management mindset, that praise, that job well done has to come from somewhere. And so the doctor really has to build those skills for him or herself to say, you know, that was actually a pretty good piece of work, right? And we get bogged down in all kind of things. You know, we don't want to be arrogant, right? Oh, I did a really great piece of work there. You know, we somehow equate that with arrogance. But anyway, that's another topic. Another kind of piece of this management mindset that's related to this good job thing is generating your own confidence. Adrian, you alluded to this, generating your own confidence that I'm actually pretty good at doing this and I can rely on myself to get it done. As employees, we get a lot of that confidence from our boss and from their feedback. And so we get out into this world where feedback is a little harder to come by. And then we go, okay, well, where does my confidence come from? You have to learn to generate your own confidence. There's a really good book on this. It's called The Confident Mind, and it's by Dr. Nate Zinsser. He is a performance coach at, I think, West Point. And he deals with this notion of confidence. How do you help somebody who's standing on a 3-meter diving board facing a dive that they've only done a few times, and the last time they did it, they completely botched it? How do you implant confidence in them so that they can give their best performance? And his whole book is about that. So I highly recommend it there. But generating your own confidence is something that you have to do. And then reading the book is a tactic for how to generate that confidence. We get lots of things from the boss. We get task management, we get role definition, we get feedback, we get career management, we get confidence from the boss and from our organization. And then the management mindset is to learn ways to develop that for ourselves, because as we said, these new situations can limit our boss's ability to engage with us in these mindset areas. The second part of that question is this whole notion of task management. Task management really relates to confidence. You do tasks, you watch yourself do tasks, you see yourself complete tasks, and you get good results. And over time, that gives you confidence in building up your own task management and that it works. And a good system for task management really allows you to track that work and to see yourself completing it and to look back and go, yeah, I did these things and the result was good. And so that leads out into some confidence. In any event, you're going to need to do your own task management as you grow in your career, or as you lean into knowledge work, or as you move out into the gig economy. You're going to have to manage your own tasks, your own task list, and say, oh, this one's more important than that one, because the ability to ask a boss about this is decreasing in all these situations. So a system that you put in place to do that will help you watch yourself and build confidence. Now, those of you that know me, Attention Compass is a task management system, and my business is to coach you in implementing your own Attention Compass. And so it helps you with task and attention management such that you can really make effective trade-offs and effective decisions about which are the right tasks to engage in and which tasks are better done another time. So prioritizing your work, managing that work getting done, and delivering those results is what Attention Compass is all about. We touch on a few of these other ideas, but that's really the one I want to highlight here. My clients will tell you that engaging in a thorough system of task management really breeds their confidence. They feel better about what they're doing. They feel calmer and more relaxed about their work. They have more confidence when they're facing new situations because they've demonstrated to themselves over and over and over again that they can actually deliver on these tasks that, when put together, produce these great results that they're looking for. Adrian also alluded to this notion of work-life balance. When we look at work-life balance, that's a fairly new challenge. And so thinking back to factory days, there wasn't much in the way of work-life balance. You went to the factory, you did your shift, you were totally focused on work. There was no space for life. But then when you got done with your work, then it was over. There's many factory jobs that you simply can't do without a factory around you. So when we look into this work-life balance thing, it really becomes a task management idea, but we have to change our mindset a little bit. As we move away from those factory days of being told what to do and being there for 8 hours and being able to focus on that, we have to look out into not only our work, which is the things we do to make dollars, but also into our other work, which is the things we do to turn ourselves and our environment into what we want it to be. It's still work. We just get paid for it in different currency, so to speak. I invest in my relationship with my wife, and she does not pay me in dollars, but I'm rewarded for that by having a stronger and deeper relationship with the person that I love most on the earth. As we deal with task management, what we find is that we can learn how to manage those trade-offs better. And if you're out into the gig economy, then you're going to need to manage these trade-offs. As we talked about, customer A wants something and customer B wants something. They want them at the same time. So how am I going to do the task trade-offs to fulfill both customers' requirements? As we get into a solid task management system, we'll see that it leads to the ability to self-praise and grow confidence, the ability to be motivated based on that confidence, the ability to not just be confused and feel like we're thrashing. That's these two questions of self-management. The first is developing that management mindset about how do we motivate ourselves. And then the second part of that is this nuts and bolts of task management. So I'll take a minute and I'll talk about the features that a good task management system should have and the things that a good task management system should supply for you so that you can begin to build one. Again, I'll put in a quick plug for Attention Compass. That's the goal of Attention Compass. So if you feel yourself needing to get this done, one way to do it would be to reach out to me and I can help you get a solid task management system into place that will then help you with this gap, this vacuum that we're all experiencing in the management world. Just some ideas about what a task management system should do for you or enable you to do. So the first thing is a task management system, you need to capture everything because it's very difficult on the spur of the moment or in advance to decide what's going to be important and really what's not, right? So we want to capture a lot of stuff. A lot of things, we think will be important to us later, but we don't have a place to keep them. So we wind up losing them. First thing a task management system should help you do is to capture everything. That means everything across different formats as well. I'm talking about emails, I'm talking about URLs, I'm talking about documents, work in progress, whether it's a spreadsheet or a Word doc or a PowerPoint or whatever you're using, be able to capture those files. It's very important to be able to do that and really just capture everything. A good task management system would be one space that's online. And online is important because that way you can access it from a lot of different places. So another feature of the task management system is that it's one space, one place for this stuff. And that one place is online. Online is really important because it allows you to access the information from wherever you are. And online has a different kind of flexibility in terms of the different types of information that it can capture. So one online space, your go-to space to store all the stuff that you've captured. An effective task management system allows you to organize multiple lists. So you have a minimum of 2 lists. You don't have one list. Many people go, oh, well, I've got a to-do list, and that's my one list. You can't survive that way because there has to be a list of things that you've decided to do now and things that you've decided to not do now. And the second one is much larger than the first one, but you need to be able to track that decision to not engage in some task right now so that you can engage in it later. So multiple lists, and you'll actually find that you have dozens and dozens of different lists once you learn how to organize a backlog of tasks pretty well. So multiple lists. We talked about tracking decisions to do something and the decision to postpone something, but I'll add that a system should involve reminders. So one of the ways to keep track of something is to make sure that you'll trip over it at the appropriate time. So when we look at our task management system, it needs to be able to metaphorically make you trip over a task that you postponed so that you don't just forget about it. A lot of people use a lot of different kind of reminders. Ideally, they're built into the system because then the reminder is attached to the work rather than a reminder pops up on your phone alarm and you have to go pile up the stuff that you need in order to do the work that you just got reminded of. So if that's built in, then that's really ideal. A good task management system utilizes your calendar, but doesn't depend on it. Don't use your calendar as your only task management system. It's far too limiting. It's far too structured. And this goes back to, in my world, our physical day timer days. We had a notebook and we called it a day timer, and it was set up a particular way. And we would push decisions forward. And there was a process for doing this, but eventually the forward-looking stuff just got so huge that we couldn't deal with it anymore. And so we had to kind of declare bankruptcy and throw all that away and start over from scratch. And so we get this too limited situation if we rely solely on our calendar to try to help us manage things. That's just not what it's built for, right? And if you use a tool for a purpose that it's not intended, you break things and have trouble. Just a word on over-reliance on a calendar. So that's 5 or 6 things your system needs to do for you. And finally, again, Attention Compass is designed to be this exact solution that you need. So happy to talk to you about that at some point. So Adrian, congratulations. And I want to say congratulations on 2 things. One is on your new job. And I think with some of these things built in, you'll do a stellar job. Maybe this is a turning point in your career trajectory. And so I want to celebrate that with you. But also, I want to congratulate you for having the insight and, again, dare I say, the humility to kind of reach out and recognize that, hey, maybe there's some information out there that I don't know. So let me ask a question and see if somebody else knows something that I don't. Far too few people have that ability and that tendency to put their hand up and go, hey, you know what? Just between you and me, I need some help. So congratulations on that. And that really is a skill that I think will put you in great career currency as it goes on. So we'll do a quick recap. One of the things that we're facing in the modern economy is that we're losing our bosses. And by that, I mean our bosses are less and less bossing, or we may just be abandoning the corporate structure altogether and going out on our own with a side gig in the knowledge economy. But when we lose them, we also lose their benefits to us. And the 3 forces that we talked about are widening that gap and creating this management vacuum, if you will. So we need more of a self-management mindset. And we talked about what that is. The ability to build our own confidence, the ability to motivate ourselves, the ability to get things done when we really don't want to get things done. And that's not our top desire, but to go ahead and manage through that. Also, I'll say we need more management tool set. We need more task and attention management tools because we're no longer being told at a detailed level because of the 3 forces. We're no longer being told what to do at that detailed level. And then finally, just to recap the 3 forces, 1 is promotions, career growth, put us in positions where we have less and less detailed management. 2 is knowledge work. As we grow into the knowledge work economy, as we become more effective knowledge workers ourselves, then it's harder and harder for the people that we report to give us this detailed management. And then the 3rd, of course, is the gig economy, where we just basically say, hey, I don't need a boss. And so we lose those benefits that bosses provide for us. And then we've got to manage these things ourselves. That's what was looked at today. And we did a little bit of talking about what a task management system should look like. So I hope that's helpful. As you get into this situation, you can look at the task management system. I gave you a couple of books to take a look at from the management mindset perspective. And so have a look at those as well. Adrian, thanks again. I hope that this has been the kind of episode that you're proud that your question spurred this kind of episode. Keep those questions coming. I look forward to talking with you again real soon. I'll leave it there for now. This is Larry Tribble, Ph.D. Thanks for taking some time to improve your task and information management on the Do Busy Right podcast. The show is dedicated to helping you think about how to get better at working. And we do this by improving your attention and your focus. I believe that your work is not just about your job, but about all the tasks that you do to turn yourself, your environment, and your relationships into what you want them to be. What we're really talking about here is the underpinnings of becoming who you want to be. The primary way I help people is through coaching the Attention Compass process. Attention Compass is 4 workflows and a tool set that support our information, task, and attention management. I help people with big goals to build habits that put them in a position to achieve. We do this by eliminating wasted time and wasted attention. If you'd like to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn or go to dobusyright.com for more information. Have a good week, more effective and less exhausted. Do Busy Right.